Hey you guys, this is Josh
And Carolyn.
with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought.
This week we're talking about the reasons that we have come to love freeze drying and why we think you might like freeze drying too.
You know, I have a theory, and my theory is that in 10 years, maybe 20, freeze drying is going to be like canning is today. Canning is like the method. But if you go back and think about it, there was a point in time where canning, getting a canner, getting jars, getting lids was high tech and expensive.
Yeah.
The things we talk about with freeze drying today.
And it wasn't that long ago. It was, 100 something years ago.
And I think with where we're going, that eventually freeze drying is going to replace that, and we'll kind of see it like as the norm, not now where we're all adopting it and getting used to it. Anyways, just a
interesting
prophetic look to the future. I don't know.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely something that is replacing a lot of canning in our house. Not all the canning. You see, for those of you guys on video, you can see I've got blueberry pie filling behind me. There are tons of jars of canned food still hitting our shelves this year, but it is replacing a lot of things for us that I'm not canning anymore, and it's saving me so much time. But we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. So first, of course, we need some chit chat. If you're not here for the chit chat, if you don't like the chit chat, you just want to hear about the main topic, you can skip ahead. We should have it all time-stamped for you. That's the word I was looking for. So you can skip ahead to the main topic. But most of us here, we like our coffee and our chit chat, huh?
Absolutely. Got to have a little chit chat. So hang out. We'll get there. We'll get to the point.
Good. What are you up to?
About 5'11".
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm trying to rib her a little bit today.
Giving me a hard time. Did I look too serious? I'm focused.
Focused. You are focused. And
buzzing.
Something else is defocusing.
Okay.
All right.
There we
go. What am I up to? What are we up to? Well, we are still plugging away on the barn addition. Not so much the addition at this point, but part of the addition is improvements. And so we're improving our water system. Mm-hmm. Even though we have a barn and we've got a frost-free riser in it, we still got to run the hoses out and drain them during the winter. And so we've just put in, it's a seasonal system, still has to be winterized, but it's hard piped. With a faucet down to each waterer. And it eliminates the movement of the hoses, and it will be self-gravity draining. So we just open a valve, drain it out, and it is going to revolutionize that, because we've got a lot of animals, and that's one of the bigger chores actually in the winter, is just watering all the animals.
So the water is up overhead,
yes.
And then you have faucets, or what are you calling them?
They're just spigots. They're just a valve coming down with a short hose that goes into the water trough.
Into
each one.
In each stall.
Yeah, and it really isn't that expensive. It's just running some
So
PVC
easy.
with a little plastic ball valve, and then you can just turn those on. And instead of dragging the hose from stall to stall. So it's, it's one of those things I've been working towards for a decade, trying to figure out a system like this that's not super expensive. We just don't want to do the floating. I mean, the super cool system is the heated on-demand floated waters. That is just crazy expensive. And just
for the amount of animals that we have, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, if it's one of them, it's fine. There's some cool solutions out there that, I'll just give water on demand, and they're heated. Those are great, but they're expensive. I was looking at one today because I was looking for a pig watering solution, and it's a couple $1,000s for this thing, and it goes way down in the ground, and it's bulletproof and bomb-proof and everything else. Anyway, so this is a good, for our situation, low-cost scenario. We still got to manage it. We still got to drain it, but we don't have to get the hoses in and out and move it and from stall to stall, or just do all the stuff we have to during winter to keep our watering system going. So that's great. Next is electricity.
I'm sorry, that sounds like that's almost worthy of a video right there, because I bet you there's a lot of people who fight with frozen waters all winter long.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a pain. So
it is a pain, and
we want to see that.
We'll probably do that as we get back into the barn this year and we get these systems up and running. The other one that we have a hard time with is keeping the water thawed out. Mm-hmm. And so water heaters that go in a watering trough actually have a lot of draw of electricity. to just
Okay.
keep it simple. And it's always taxing our electrical system.
Okay.
And it's got cords everywhere. It's kind of a mess. So we've made do, and it's better than the days when we used to go out and break it open with a hatchet or a chainsaw to get to the water, to free the water up for the animals. So we're moving steps forward. That this is the next iteration, is getting some electrical system improvements so we have enough power, right breaker setup, and right power distribution to keep each of these non-frozen during that time of year. So those are two big, time-consuming management issues for us at this point during winter that we are improving. So that's the big focus. I'm starting to think about winter. It's August, but we just got we got all our grain in. We're getting all our hay in actually today.
Grain is in animal feed grain.
Yeah, which we're reducing. Actually, most of it's alfalfa pellets for the dairy cow, but
not even
for
grain.
winter. Yeah, no, there's some grain because we got the meat chickens, and we need some for the layers, and then the pigs we supplement when we don't have enough other things, mixes of whole grains that we soak in the milk if we have it, or water if we don't have milk. So we're getting all that stocked up for the winter. That's already all in. Hay is coming in today. We'll be bringing in 20 tons of hay today, this afternoon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that will take care of our hay for the winter.
Okay.
And then I'm starting to think about firewoods, the next biggie.
The next step.
As we're watching the gardens crank along and do their thing, which is going good. So.
Yeah, we kind of have an order of operations here that we can't put things in what we're calling our root cellar because it's really the basement stairwell.
Storm doors for those of you who are familiar with that.
Right. Yeah. So we can't put our root cellar things in there until we have all the firewood in for the year.
Right.
And so we have to make sure we are like timing all of this right, so that we can get the root vegetables in when it's time.
Right.
Which, right now we're still end of August. By the time you guys are hearing this, it's probably end of August. But we're up here in North Idaho, winter comes fast after August. It feels like, we got to start getting everything in and getting stashed and stored and buttoned down for cold weather to appear.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. Otherwise, things are normal. Gardens growing. Animals are moving around the pasture. We got a new round of chicks in today. Connor's off getting those right now.
Yep.
This will be our fourth round.
The last round for the summer.
That's the last round of the summer for meat chicks. Yep. And, thinking about winter and the ways off from harvesting, but I'm starting to strategize we're going to do, we go back and forth on harvesting our own animals. When we're really busy, we just have the butcher come and do them. But we like it a lot better when we do it. We're always more happy with the outcome. We don't get maybe the fancy cuts, but we feel like we get a lot better utilization of our animals when we butcher ourselves. So looking to do more of that this winter. So I'm starting to plan that out. So lots going on. What about you?
Lots of pieces. Ooh, harvest right now. We kind of just officially hit real harvest season. Green beans are now in, so we're doing a picking every couple days of green beans and snapping those. We're starting to get a trickle of tomatoes, definitely cucumbers, steady stream of cucumbers, summer squash. So we're just working on kind of keeping up with everything we've got in the ground and is coming in kind of in flushes and, starts here. We're starting to watch the onions. Onions aren't far from harvest.
They're getting there.
Another couple weeks.
Reminding me, or I'm going to remind you right now while we're here, we need to get the garlic out of the way.
Garlic
the garlic has been curing.
And it's time to come in.
It needs to come in.
Yep. Okay, so we'll get that on the list for this week. So we're bringing the garlic in too. So just kind of all of that. Of course, when we're dealing with harvesting things, we're also thinking now more and more about saving seed and about next year's crop. So like that garlic, when it's all laid out like this and cured, we're gonna pull the best of the garlic to be next year's seed garlic. And we're going to set that aside because that'll go back in October, November, usually around October here, early October, back into the ground. So we're thinking about that on all sorts of things. The beans, as we're picking the beans, we're leaving beans on the plant at a certain height to become the seed beans to mature out so we have seed for next year. Same thing for peas. We've got lettuces bolted that we're watching carefully out in the garden to be able to bag as soon as they get close to setting seed themselves, and cilantros and lots of different things like that. So lots happening on the seeding side. one of the things we're doing a lot of, though, is we're doing all the harvesting. We're doing a lot of freeze drying. And that's kind of why this is a timely topic. It's I timed filming this new master class that we're just about to release. It's like a week or two around the corner, you guys, for those of you who are watching this or listening to it right as it releases. It goes live on September 6th. And so I'm filming. I'm almost done with it. I'm kind of down to the last few things. But spending a lot of time filming videos for this class. It's really exciting. It is going to be the class that kind of shows you everything you need to know about freeze drying. And so it's exciting and it's coming out. And those of you guys who've been around for a while know that whenever we release a brand new product, we make sure to give our subscribers, our listeners, the best price ever offer when it first comes out. It's kind of a one-time
celebration of releasing
celebration. Yep. It's a thank you to you guys for being with us and for hanging out. But in order to get that price, which is really, really good, and to get some special bonuses that we're throwing in just for that, you have to be on the wait list, so you know when it opens. But on top of that, we're also giving away a freeze dryer on the wait list.
So like the really cool insider track here.
Yes. So if you are interested in freeze drying, you're going to want to get on this list and get the emails about that and know what's going on there. So
and it will be a large freeze dryer.
A large freeze dryer. Woohoo.
Harvest right, large freeze dryer.
Yay, it's really exciting. So so we'll put the link down in the description or the show notes for you to get on that list. Don't wait because we're running down on time. So anyways, just been putting a lot of energy into that, but it coincides perfectly with harvest season. So we're like harvesting and filming all at the same time.
Perfect.
So it's working out just right in here. But the freeze dryers are running just about 24/7 right now. The two that are right there had to be silenced for filming because they're kind of loud to film next to. But aside from that, they are running all the time. So
good stuff.
Yeah, pretty good.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Want to jump into a question of the day?
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Lots of questions. We keep getting questions about mold-free coffee. How do you find out if your coffee has mold? And do you guys have a coffee that you recommend with a link? People are asking specifically for a link.
We can give you what we're doing. It's not the only one out there. So a little bit of backdrop. Coffee comes from humid environments, so a lot of coffees do have the potential for mold. It's very hard to know whether they do or don't. There are certain companies out there that test and then certify. That's a big subject. I did a bit of research when we went through this, and it depends on how far you want to go to validate their certification. So this is not a regulated industry, so there's a level of trust that you have to go with and look at the company. We're going with Purity Coffee, and so we'll drop you a link down below on that. We won't know how it's affecting us as far as our mold toxicity until we do another test, which is a ways down the road yet. So, but it's part of our regime of, besides detoxing, is trying to eliminate some things. So that we'll kind of know from that side eventually. We don't know yet, but we did go with Purity. There are some other ones you can do a little bit of research on them, and I would just encourage you to do your research. I felt like their process was pretty good, though I did not track it down. I went by some other serious coffee bloggers that did deep dives into this, and I found a few of them, and I liked Purity, and so that's what we're going with.
Yeah.
But there's a few out there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Do you want to get a quick update? How's your detox going? How are you feeling?
I'm actually doing pretty good, though. I just realized the main supplement that I'm taking, I thought I was at where I was supposed to be, because you had to build up to it, and I just realized I was only halfway there.
Oh.
Because I was like, this isn't going too bad. So it's going fine for me. Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine's a little uncomfortable. I keep breaking out and getting itchy and having days where I feel very, not so much brain fog, but more like sinusy. Like you could probably even hear it. I sound
And that may be the
stuffy.
molds. Some of that's probably the molds because
some of the
you
molds
take them
coming back
in. They
out.
come back out where you take them in. So I
Yeah.
did have a bout earlier this summer in the lungs.
That's right.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
probably some of that.
So it's a little uncomfortable, but I've just moved past my whole first stage and I'm now getting into next stage. So I get to start a brand new supplement, which apparently is the really strong
that's
one.
you're going,
yeah, I'm about
yeah.
to go on the one that you've been on. And, but at the same time, she's doing some cell lining repair work with me. So I'm on something new for that. And I don't even remember what that's called because I literally just got it
Yeah.
yesterday. So yeah, it's going pretty well. I'll be happy when it's over. I definitely feel it dragging me
Yeah.
down. I feel tired a lot more than I feel like I should for the amount of sleep I'm getting. But you know, but
I'd
it's good. We're
I'd
getting
agree.
there.
Yep. Cool. All right, let's see. We're going to do one more here.
Yeah, I think we could just move on here.
Moving on.
Yeah.
All right.
Get into the main topic. There we go. Okay, top reasons why freeze drying has changed our lives. That sounds a little strong. I think it's top reasons why we really like freeze drying and why it's something that we have really started moving towards in our preservation, not away from the other things. We're still dehydrating, we're still fermenting, definitely doing a lot of fermenting, still doing some canning. But more and more we're moving towards the freeze drying and for a lot of these reasons.
Yeah. Well, this has a much larger impact on you
It does.
than it does me. I'm more the beneficiary of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Though there are a few things that I particularly really like about it. But first one is ease of preservation.
This is probably the number one reason, honestly.
Yeah.
At least in the like boots on the ground, practical, the way it affects our life, it is so easy and it's so fast. It puts canning to shame.
Well, and talk about fast because it's fast, but it's not. And I think it's more the ease and the use of your time versus canning. And
Yeah,
I think
good call.
canning is the good juxtaposition here
Yeah.
in understanding like what it takes to can from your time and your
Right.
efforts and just mostly your attention. You can only multitask so much when you're
Right.
canning. So maybe break that out because I think that's probably one of the more powerful things here.
Yeah, that's a really good call because the machine itself runs sometimes for 36 hours, so it's not faster as in start to finish faster. So you're definitely right on that. What it's faster on is active work time.
Yeah.
So my time that I'm actually having to do something and pay attention to something. So let's take, for example, tomatoes. So it used to be when I would can tomatoes, I would have to bring the tomatoes in, get them washed, put a little X in the bottom of each one, drop them into boiling water, then cool them down just to be able to peel them, then de-seed them, and then be able to chop them or something like that just to get them in the jars, and then to be able to run them through the canner for, you know, however long the canner has to run, depending on the size jar I was doing and the elevation we're at. So that whole process would often, if I wanted to do enough tomatoes for our household, we haven't successfully been able to grow enough of our own tomatoes like that to put up for everything for our own household. But if I were doing that, the canning would literally take me probably a week to do.
So when you say a week, you're talking about a week in hours.
I'm talking about a week of
Or
like
just a week
full
of work,
days of canning.
full days of canning,
Yeah.
just for the tomatoes.
Just for the tomatoes. It's huge.
Because you've got to kind of,
You can
besides
only
the
do so many
prepping, I mean,
batches at a
you got to
time.
do prep work for the freeze dryer, but the canning you have to be a lot more involved with the canner itself, right?
You have to be a lot more involved, but you have to peel the tomatoes, which is
So
a
you have to with
huge
can-
piece of the
got it.
project. Yeah, you have to for canning safety. And I mean, honestly, if you've ever not peeled them and just kind of thrown safety to the wind, they get really tough, the peels do, in the canning process. So unless you're going to blend them in a blender, it's really not even worth it to
Yeah.
go around it. When I'm freeze drying, I literally take the tomatoes. If I have good canning tomatoes, I don't even core them. I leave the tops on. It's fully edible. I take the little green tops off, pop the stems off,
Sure.
but I don't take the cores out. I run them through my food processor on the dicer setting. I dump them out on freeze dryer trays, and I put them in the freeze dryer and push go. Like, that is the difference.
Yeah.
I can do a whole bushel in it's under 10 minutes. that I can get them into the machine. And then I have to take them out when it's done, and I have to put them into jars and vacuum seal them, which does take, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it is way, way, way faster.
And it makes a huge difference. People often ask us, like, how will we do it all? How do we do all this? And one of the things we're always doing is looking for hacks, really good hacks for systems, for things that streamline processes, right? Doing things in batch, like talking about canning. Carolyn's going to talk about always doing the larger batches, right? Filling them up. Just always looking for things. And the freeze dryer is one of those things that just, for the modern homesteader that is trying to seriously grow some food, create some food resiliency, or get healthy food, whatever your goals are, but you're trying to get this done in the modern life, and still got to work a job, and still got to drive here and there, and all, just all the things. Yeah. It's just a game changer on that level.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm going to go, we have a little list here as a prompt for ourselves, but I'm going to go a little off script here, in that one of the other things it does that I don't even think is on this list is it allows me to preserve the things that grow well here. So here we grow things like cabbage and broccoli really, really well. Cauliflower. Really, really well. If you have ever had anything that has canned cabbage in it, it's horrible. It is an awful, awful flavor.
Broccoli? I don't even know if we've ever canned broccoli.
Well, you're not really supposed to, because it's
not.
just awful. It tastes terrible. And so what are your other preservation options with broccoli? It's really to freeze it and take up freezer space, right? The freeze dryer, on the other hand, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, like all of these things that you can't really even can, it opens up a whole new method of getting those into jars and on my shelf. Yeah. And they rehydrate beautifully. And so it's really not only allowed us to be more efficient in the kitchen with the harvesting, but because we can focus on preserving the crops that grow really well here, it's letting us be more efficient in the gardening.
Which is a compounding effect.
It's a really big, actually.
It's a compounding interest, right?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
When you sum up all the hours on those things total, it's a huge amount of time every year.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Well, you didn't go off script that much, because the next thing on the script is flavor, and talking about, these things. The flavor, and for me, that's a huge one. I've always been thankful for canned food, and there are some things that you can that come out great. A lot of the meals that you do and everything are fantastic. But when you're just solo canning, particularly vegetables, a lot of them are just kind of they're okay, all right, we're glad to have them. We got some of these vegetables on the table in wintertime. We're thankful for that. We knew where it came from. But you just kind of lose the wow factor of the homegrown food once it's been through that canning process.
It's true.
Not so with the freeze dryer. Those things, the broccolis, the cauliflowers, the peppers, just all the different vegetables that Carolyn does.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. They're wonderful coming out of the freeze dryer properly rehydrated. They're amazing. Yeah. And, especially mixed into things, you don't know the difference. And even some of the vegetables just straight up, rehydrated, you can hardly tell the difference. Really, really good. And that's not the case with most canned vegetables.
We found baby Nathaniel's new favorite food.
No.
It's freeze-dried broccoli. Not still dry. He likes it dry because it crunches, and he just loves it. He just will keep eating it. That's kind of a fun thing too, is that a lot of these vegetables, they're so good when they're just dry. They make really fun snacks. It's actually kind of
the flavor is just like,
they're so good.
The fruit is amazing.
Well, and the crunch, because they get really crunchy, so that's really good.
Well, and so then you're leading right into texture being another thing when this food, once it's been rehydrated.
It would be a stretch to say that the texture is just like fresh, because it really isn't. Some things are incredibly close, but some things not so much. And so, especially for the vegetables, something that I found is for most of the vegetables, I do take the time to go ahead and do a quick blanch on them. And then when they rehydrate so well, but they rehydrate not like raw, they rehydrate like perfectly cooked. And that's kind of my key, is to use that process to my advantage. So then all I have to do is rehydrate them. I do have a trick though, and that is that when you rehydrate something like your vegetables, even though they're perfectly cooked, if you throw them in a pan with a little bit of butter and just saute them real fast, nobody has a clue. Like it just adds that much little bit of flavor, the little bit of fat in there, and the little extra bit of pan frying. Oh, so good. So good. It's a good way to go. So,
Amazing.
yeah, texture is amazing.
Cool. All right, here's one that's actually probably the most important. It may not register on our sensory load or on our time management, but it is actually really, really important and key to why a lot of us are growing and preserving our own food, and that is nutritional value. We're going to talk about nutritional value, especially compared to canning.
Yeah, so when I first was getting into freeze drying and researching it, you hear all these numbers from the freeze drying companies. It's like it retains 97% of its nutritional value up to, 20 years or something like that. And I really thought, oh, these are just good marketing numbers.
Hype.
Yeah, all hype. But when I was researching for writing my freeze drying the harvest book that is coming out here in just a couple weeks.
I was going to say, yeah,
Really
somewhat in
exciting.
conjunction, just behind the class a little bit.
Just behind the class. When I was researching for that, I started pulling up all the studies. And there's actually a lot of them because the government uses freeze drying and has for so long for
long
MREs.
time. Yeah, for military
foods.
meals.
Uh-huh.
And the government generally feeds its people pretty well.
Well,
They've got to go out and do what they have to do.
You want to keep
healthy
people
soldiers.
healthy.
Yeah.
And it actually does. It is far and away the best long-term preservation method.
For nutritional value.
For nutritional value. Fermenting short-term is really the best because it actually increases some of the nutrients in your food. That lactic acid actually brings in some things. But for anything longer than about 6 months, freeze drying is absolutely the top. But the thing with freeze drying is it just holds its value.
It doesn't decline.
It does very, very, very lightly.
The way others do.
It doesn't, especially your stuff in your freezer, after 6 months, your freezer numbers drop. Like, your nutrition value is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
By the time you get to a year and a half, you've dropped a lot of nutrients out of your food in the freezer. But that stuff on your shelf from the freeze dryer just kind of starts chugging along, and really can go for up to 20 years. It can go longer if it stays dry. I think they haven't done studies beyond that to be able to say how long you can actually store the stuff.
Yeah.
And have it be at high nutrient density. But it doesn't go bad after 20 years. So.
Most of us aren't too worried about storing food for 20 years.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Grow your own. Keep a year or two of stock on and keep replacing it. You'll be good.
That's really the
goal.
But
if you want that, you've got it here.
You can do it.
Yeah, and I would say, you see all the freeze-dried packages, the apocalypse freeze-dried packages that you can get all this stuff. Well, look, you buy a freeze dryer, grow your own food, or buy it from the farmer's market to get your preps going. Besides getting your living prepared, your homesteading stuff going, it's going to pay for itself.
Oh yeah.
In setting all of that up.
Absolutely.
All right, I was going to skip to here.
Cool.
Convenience meals, another thing that's a big hack in making life easier, having these convenience meals on the shelf.
Absolutely. And we're not talking about things like beans and rice necessarily. You could do that. That would be good too. But we're talking about things like lasagna, chicken pot pie.
Ooh, the chicken pot pie is...
Fajitas. We're talking full meals that are amazing, and they sit on your shelf. And you can grab them and you can heat them up. You can rehydrate them within a couple of minutes and they're ready to go.
Spaghetti, chili Colorado.
Ooh,
that was a good one. We did
that's
that
really
with a friend of ours a couple of years ago. That
That's
was
right.
so good.
And you've gotten to use those a bit. We've made some for you.
Oh yeah, for backpacking, for hunting, for traveling. It's hard to get good food. I've had to travel a lot, particularly the last few years for the School of Traditional Skills. And it's hard to eat well when you're out. Yeah. This makes it, you can create wonderful homemade meals that you can eat on the go kind of wherever you're at, really.
And it's really helped you to be able to keep your regular food routine. Because usually when we're at home, first thing in the morning, maybe you have a cup of coffee and then you're not even eating breakfast at this point. You're just having really good bone broth. A cup of
Something
bone
to
broth.
do with I like breakfast, but it sticks too much anymore.
So you're having the bone
The
broth.
bone broth, yeah.
And then, of course, we're used to eating really high quality food here
Mm-hmm.
right off the homestead. And so when you're traveling, you're able to do a freeze dried latte that you can have first thing with our own good
Yeah.
raw cow's milk.
Yep.
We're able to do really good bone broth.
Yep.
And I'm able to put those all in little Mylar bags that you can travel with. And it's, super lightweight.
Yeah.
It's another one we're talking about here is that it becomes really, really lightweight. And so
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, it is. It's easy to pack. It's no problem traveling with it because it's dry. Like I've had it in my carry-on bags. Never had a problem. And yeah,
They've never pulled it out and said like, "Why is this?" bag
I've
of
wondered,
lasagna
especially
in
like
here?"
the broth and the latte is like a powder, in there if they see it in this little silver Mylar bag, and I've just been waiting to get, pulled aside and flagged, and never have. So
All right, that's good.
yeah, and of course lightweight, if you're backpacking.
Yeah, sounds good. Another really big one for us here is that it saves freezer space.
And the energy of the freezer as well.
Freezer energy, yeah. It's a big space saver for us. The freeze dryer costs money to run, but the freezers have to run all the time. Right. So if you're just like, hey, I need a freezer for all my berries that I'm harvesting. I know people who literally have this. They're smoothie drinkers, and they want their own berries, and they literally have huge truss freezers just for their berries. You could get rid of an entire freezer and just run those through the freeze dryer. Yeah. And it's so easy and so fast.
Cool. Can you address, and it wasn't even here really, but can you address cost? And I know the book, I think, goes into this in detail because you got somebody to actually do the
cost
electrical engineering, scientific cost analysis, but it's one of the big things besides buying a freeze dryer. One of the, what I say is a myth, I think, is how expensive they are to run.
Yeah.
What did you find out in general when you guys did that research?
Well, one thing that I found out is how different energy costs are across the country right now. Like it is a huge difference. Thank you, California, on one side for being just off the charts expensive. And down to the other side, it's very, very cheap. So, of course, that plays in a lot to
where you're
what
at.
your cost is where you're at and what your electricity cost is to begin with. What was really interesting, though, is that it is, freeze drying is the most expensive form of food preservation. That, definitely.
From energy consumption.
From an energy consumption point of view, it takes a lot more, costs more than pressure canning, getting through a pressure canner batch or anything like that. It's not as expensive as you would think it would be, and it starts to rival keeping your food in a freezer, actually, which was really interesting to me. If you're keeping, comparable amounts for a year in a freezer, your freeze dryer is only a little bit more expensive than that. Now, one thing I can say very definitively is that the size freeze dryer that you're running makes a huge difference in its efficiency. The extra large freeze dryer is, I think it's like 3 times more energy efficient than the medium.
Because you're getting more food done with not, the ratio between food done and energy costs aren't the same. So the food goes up, but the energy cost does not go up the same amount.
So in the book, we broke it down into cents per pound of food preserved and stored. So we really broke it down to a per pound amount to be able to, kind of compare apples to apples so that you can see. And again, freeze drying is the most expensive, but it's, like I'm not looking at the numbers right now. So something in the freezer for a year costs about 15 cents or something like that per pound of food to store. The extra large freeze dryer costs like 17 cents to process it. And then, of course, you are done storing it. You don't have any ongoing storage costs of energy
Nor
like
risks
you do.
of the freezer failing and the different
there's a lot of insurance there.
different things there too. And I think what's harder to bring into the cost is what we started out talking about in the ease of preservation and time management and your own time. And people don't often factor in their own time and effort into the cost of getting food preserved and in onto the shelf or into the freezer or wherever it's going.
Right.
And that has a huge effect on what you can do in your life and your family time, all kinds of things. And so that's a cost that needs to be added to that. So I'd say you actually start pulling that 17 cents back a little bit if you were to come up with an equation that valued your time.
Oh,
and you
gosh.
factored all that in, and then the benefits of what you can do with that time if you used it accordingly, whether it's helping you achieve more of your homestead goals or freeing up some family time or husband and wife time or whatever it is,
Or
you're going to lower that cost.
Go start keeping bees instead of standing over a canner. Like,
Well,
there's
that's what
so
I
many
mean.
other
So you're
things,
gonna do
yeah.
something else that can lower the cost of your food with that time.
Totally.
So that is going to take that actual cost
I
down.
was trying to run some quick numbers in my
Right.
head, and I don't think I can come up with it. But if I took the amount of hours that I have saved by using a freeze dryer instead of canning, and I paid myself $10 an hour, let's say on that, I bet you that the machine would pay for itself in the first year.
Yeah.
Definitely in
I
the
would-
first
I
2
would
years.
guess.
That is how much time I
Yeah,
save.
and
It's
$10
huge.
an hour is really cheap. That's not
Yeah.
not
I wouldn't go take a job for $10 an
No,
hour.
no. So it makes a difference.
It makes a really big difference.
Cool.
Now, speaking of cost, I really want to talk about this for a second.
The waste.
The waste.
So the less waste, which is another cost factor,
It is another cost factor that comes in.
along with some other values. So less waste.
So a lot of people tell me something like, "Oh, my kids, my family, my husband, whoever it is, hates eating leftovers. They hate seeing the same food over and over again in a row." I'll tell you what, the freeze dryer is the answer to this, because when you have leftovers, whether it's a huge amount or it's just a little amount, so you can do this intentionally, make too much food and have a huge amount, or let's just say, you had a little bit more in the pot at the end of dinner. You can put that on a freeze dryer tray and store that in your freezer, your regular freezer, until you've added enough food on that tray to have a full tray. And then you pop one of the plastic lids, tray lids on it, and then you keep doing that until you have all of the trays to fill a freeze dryer. Run it through your freeze dryer, and then you have instant convenience meals based off of the food that you've already made. You haven't had to do any extra work on it, and you're not wasting the leftovers that nobody really wants to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get to eat leftovers, but you can serve it to them in 3 months
When they haven't
it's
just
fresh.
had it, yeah, or when somebody needs a meal in a pinch.
And we're talking meals that are like, you can grab it and you can go. You can grab it off the shelf. All you have to have is some hot water to be able to hydrate it in a couple minutes. And so you've got lunch to go, you've got convenience dinners, you've got camping food, you've got backpacking food, you have all of this food ready to go just by freeze drying your leftovers that came from making a little too much for dinner.
Yeah.
That's a huge cost savings.
And you could build that, like you were saying, you could do that strategically and build it in because you're already there, right? Whenever you can do something extra when you're already in motion, just from a time-space economy, you're already in motion, you do a bigger batch, and then you do something like that.
Yeah.
That, again, it just has a huge compounding effect.
Yeah, so just double the recipe for dinner.
Yeah.
Is pretty much what you're doing. Because freeze drying works totally different than canning, you don't have all the you can't do's that canning does. You don't have to follow specific recipes. You don't have to do all these different things. You do need to try to keep it low fat as possible. That's really the biggest thing when you're talking about making dinners is, draining your ground beef really well afterwards. And that's just because in storage the fat can go rancid. Yeah. That's the only reason. But aside from that, you can take your regular recipe and put your noodles mixed in with your spaghetti sauce, and you have an instant rehydrated spaghetti.
Well, and let's just run a scenario. You're in summertime, harvest is high, vegetables are high, and you get flushes of something that you just got a lot of extra on, but you don't have a lot of time to preserve it, but you need to get dinner done. So all of a sudden you're like making dinner, right? And I know you've experienced this, you're making dinner, but it's like, whoa, I've got all this extra stuff, so I'm gonna use it for dinner because we need to eat some of it. But we've even got more than we can eat for dinner, and then we can do with. So you make a double, triple batch for dinner.
Right.
You have dinner, and then you pull your strategy, and you've just taken a problem, which is too much food coming in too fast, fed everybody, and gotten it preserved all in the same motion. with little ease. You didn't have to get the canners out. You didn't have to go through
Yep.
all the steps of that. I mean, that's just a cool scenario right there in the life of the modern homesteader, of making stuff happen and making stuff work.
All of which comes to mean that sometime during the winter or sometime later, you have free convenience food sitting on your shelf.
Right, those times where you're then looking for the break,
Yeah.
right? And
You don't need to cook.
Yeah, you got a great, tasty, nutritionally dense meal ready to go with a little hot water.
So not only do you save the money on the leftovers, but you essentially are saving the money on things like your, takeout for those days where you have problems,
Yeah.
or you want a quick meal or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So
Well, very cool. That obviously we're sold. Hopefully we're
We like it.
infectious, because it's just made a huge difference and we were skeptics to begin with, and you've talked
really
about this other places, other videos, and we were skeptics, and we got the first one, and it didn't take long
Yeah.
to go, whoa, wow, and then on goes your journey. So anyways, hopefully this has been helpful to you guys. We're out of time.
Yep,
We
we
kind of
gotta
got to go
go.
quick. We got some
Hey,
deadlines here.
if you're interested in learning more about freeze drying, make sure you jump on that wait list. You'll get all sorts of interesting education pieces, free stuff going on over there, so you're gonna want to go check that out.
Yep, check out the link below, and hopefully you'll see Carolyn there, and we will see you next time.
Okay. see you
Goodbye.
soon. Goodbye.